Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason. Here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Sojka.
Richard, it's great to be back in the zone again. Episode 4.
Stefan, what would we do without that tremendous music?
I don't know where that came. That must have been channeled through some sort of astral plane to be that good.
An astral plane? Is that like an aeroplane?
with sound. Yeah.
An astral plane with sound. Yeah. I like that.
Oh, it's excellent. No, it's great to be back again. The 4th Skeptic Zone ever. Moving on from the old Skeptic Tank, which was awesome in its day, but the zone is just so much better. Isn't it?
I do. I love being in the zone, and apparently lots of people out there also love it. We're looking at about 3,000 downloads so far. We've cracked about 2,000, in fact, way past 2,000 iTunes subscribers.
Whoa, crack open the champers.
It's a relatively new show. Thanks for everybody who are taking the time to email us. It's really great.
Yeah, it's been great. We're getting a lot of good feedback. I know we sort of clown around a bit at the beginning here, but it's all in good fun because it is actually a fun topic, skepticism. People think it's a dry and droll, but no, it's a lot of fun.
Well, it has many facets.
It certainly does.
I think it really does. And this week's show has many facets, of course. We're going to be... we went last weekend to the Australian Skeptics National Convention.
Oh, you did too. Once again, I couldn't make it. It's so distressing, but you had a good time.
We had a fantastic time, and we'll be talking. We had some interviews, which we'll be playing a bit later on.
Awesome.
And also, there's a strange incident with a camel, but we'll get to that.
I don't know if we should keep tuning in or not. Is the rating going to change on this show?
You'll just have to keep listening to find out.
It's still PG. That's good. So what else is happening? We got Dr Phil Plait, the bad astronomer.
The big news is our first interview in a few moments will be Dr Phil Plait. This is a live interview we recorded at DragonCon.
Oh yes, he's a bit of a legend, isn't he?
A bit of a legend. He's got a new book out, Death from the Skies.
Oh my goodness!
It's about all the way the world could really end.
And there are a lot of those, aren't there? I was actually reading up about that, and there's so many, like all these bursts of radiation and meteorites, but there's a whole bunch of others that you'd never dream of. We're in big trouble.
Black holes, white holes,
suns exploding,
earthquakes. It's all getting pretty bad.
Crazy.
Of course, that's going to be the major feature for today's show, I think. But also look out for Dr. Rachie Reports. Dr. Rachael Dunlop tackling quackery.
Ah, she's good, isn't she? And she always comes up with some nice... She's got a good sense of humour too. So
she does.
Her reports are always peppered with nice, fun things.
And today she's looking at quackery in pharmacies.
There's none of that, is there?
Well, you'd be surprised.
Really?
Yes.
I am surprised.
Yes. You remember the good old days of ear candling?
I've got to love ear candling. I come from a long line of ear candlers, actually.
I
do. But I've always trusted my pharmacist. I can't believe what you're saying here,
It's
Richard.
pretty strange. Tune in for Dr. Rachie. It's a bit disturbing, I must admit. It's a bit disturbing. And that's followed, of course, by the Think Tank, where we get together Michael Wolloghan, Amanda Rose, Rachel Dunlop, and myself. Crowd into this club down the street, rip open a couple of bottles of champagne and go for it.
Oh, goodness me. Are you going to invite me to one of those one day?
Well, yes. Yeah, anytime.
Anytime? Okay, I'll
you can
come
prize yourself away from the conglomerate, which is serious media enterprises.
I know, it's a bit tough, but I will manage to tear myself away and get there. And but I did. I tore myself away just the other night at McRae Uni, wasn't it?
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
Thanks for everybody who came to the Macquarie University to hear me give my talk, Mystery Investigations. And thank you, Stefan, for being there.
You're a legend. You always are. Your talk's always fascinating and fact-filled, and the crowd loved it.
And the spoon bending got a laugh.
Oh, they love that too. Yeah, so I think it's on with the show. What do you think?
I think so, Stefan, and I'll see or speak to you at the end of the show in about an hour or so.
Looking forward to it. We'll see you at the end.
Moving right along with the show, I'd like to ask our next guest to the table, Dr. Phil Plait.
Microphone time here at the
No.
convention.
That's right. Well, you've got about 5-10 minutes, so...
That's right.
That's all he's worth. So talk really fast.
Now,
I'm pretty sure I can say my name in under 5 and 10 minutes.
Phil Plait is being brought to you today by the Mystery Investigators. www.mysteryinvestigators.com, the only paranormal busting show for schools in Australia. Thank you, I had to get that in.
Although actually I was brought here by, although that's wonderful, and I love mystery investigators, but I do have to give a shout out to the International Year of Astronomy and Pamela Gay, who did sponsor my coming to this convention.
Now, Phil's an old friend of Australia and Australian Skeptics. We brought Phil out. Oi! We brought Phil out to Australia in 2004 to attend our convention, and you gave many more talks while you were there.
Oh, that was fantastic. We went to 4 different observatories, toured the Blue Mountains, went from Sydney to Canberra, and it was 2 weeks of basically real heaven. It was great.
And I hear that you contributed to the Australian English language as well. You invented a new word for us. I heard this last night.
Well, yeah, I was pretty sure that they were making up most of the things they were telling me.
Well, you're an American.
You'd see all these signs for, we're going to Gollumhagen. And so I said, you could just make up words and it would sound real. And Richard said, I don't think you can do that. And I said, well, I think it's a perfectly drobbly thing to do. And so now I use that word. I don't think anybody else does. But it does sound Australian.
I think, yeah.
We're getting it in there, so if you hear the term drobbly in the future...
Well, yeah, because Richard was telling me to call people galahs and drongos, although I think one of those is not used that much anymore.
Oh, no, they're used.
They are?
Wow's
okay.
a drongo a little bit old.
I think I convinced him there was a duck, and I said, look at that drongo over there. Tried to convince him that we use crazy words for common objects.
Yeah. And I had really interesting conversations about what a sloppy Joe is, and it's like totally it's a food in America, but it's a sweatshirt in Australia. And I said, she said, why do you call it a sweatshirt? And it's like, and so off we went into a little twisty maze of passages, all of which looked alike. So it was a lot of fun.
One of the things that I will always remember about Phil's visit to Australia is we took him out to show him the night sky. Okay, now. A couple of questions, Phil, before you tell people about the night sky in Australia. How different, what do we see from Australia that you don't see here? I've heard that in Australia, in the southern hemisphere, you're actually looking in towards the center of the galaxy. Am I wrong or right?
That's correct. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but you can see that from the northern hemisphere. Our galaxy is a flat disk, and we live off to one side. So it's like living in the suburbs of a city where you can see downtown if you look in a certain direction. And it just so happens that is south of the equator on the sky. If you project the Earth's equator onto the sky and you divide that into a northern and a southern hemisphere, the galaxy center is south of the equator. But you can see it from most of the northern hemisphere. So where I live in Boulder, Colorado, that's in the direction of Sagittarius, the constellation Sagittarius. So I can see that, but it's low on the horizon. When you're on the southern hemisphere, or if you're, for example, cruising to the Galapagos Islands, as we did a couple of weeks ago with the James Randi Educational Foundation, Sagittarius passes almost overhead. And if the moon hadn't have been almost full while we were there, that was probably the biggest disappointment of that entire trip, of which there were very few, was that the moon was so bright we couldn't see the Milky Way sprawled out from horizon to horizon like that.
Yeah.
Which you can do in Australia when you look up in the night sky. It's a terrific backbone of the night.
Yeah.
I remember from Carl
that's the phrase.
Southern Cross.
It's stunning on a moonless night, I swear. And I was with Phil when he saw the little dwarf galaxies that are part of our galaxy or orbit our galaxy. How does it work?
Well, that was stunning. When I got there, Australia had been in a very severe drought, and it hadn't rained in, I think, 2 years.
In some parts.
Yeah, in some parts. And so it got cloudy when I got there and started raining, and so everybody was thrilled, except me. I was in the southern hemisphere for the first time, and it was freaking raining. But it finally cleared up, and it just so happened it was when we were driving to Canberra, and so we went up Mount Stromlo, I think it was, or if that is the name of the mountain, and we were just stopping by to take a look at the stars, and literally walked out of the car, closed the door, looked up, and I could see the large and the small Magellanic Clouds. And these are tiny, irregular galaxies that have a few 100 million stars in them that orbit the Milky Way like the way the moon orbits the Earth. And so from the northern hemisphere, you can see the Andromeda Galaxy, which is 2.5 or a little bit more million light years away. It's a major galaxy, but it's so far away, it just looks like a faint smudge in the sky. These guys were like, bam, like hanging there in the sky. And it was stunning. I had studied supernova 1987A, which was a star that exploded in the Large Magellanic Cloud. I'd studied this with Hubble, and all this, but I had never actually seen the LMC, the Large Magellanic Cloud. So when I stepped out of the car and saw that, it was as if I had been nailed to the ground, and I literally choked up. I was on the verge of tears. It was probably the most amazing thing I have ever seen in the night sky. It was life-changing, very cool.
But it's interesting to note that most Australians, I would say, wouldn't know what they're looking at when they look up and see those things. They're really...
Yeah, it's like New Yorkers who have never been up the Statue of Liberty. It's what you're used to, and to see that, and on the cruise a couple of weeks ago to see Alpha Centauri and the Southern Cross, which could have been better because, again, the moon was up. But, when you have people who are all from the Northern Hemisphere, and I was pointing out, that bright star there, that's Alpha Centauri. And everybody was just like, you could hear the intake of breath. It was very cool.
Yeah. Now, Phil is also, and I know this will come as a surprise to some people here, Phil is also an author. Oh, look.
Yay. Yes, I sat on my butt and stared at my computer for a year. Oh, good. Yeah.
You have another
He's lazy.
opportunity up there.
Okay. Now, Phil, for our Australian listeners, what can you tell them about your new book?
Well, it'll probably save your life. The new book's called Death from the Skies. It comes out in October, available pre-order on Amazon even today. And it's all the different ways life on Earth can be wiped out by cosmic catastrophes. And I love this because whenever I mention it, somebody says, "Oh, do you talk about asteroids?" And it's like, yeah, that's chapter 1. We get the easy stuff out of the way right away. It's wait till you get to chapter 5 and see if you can sleep through the night. It's scientifically based. I don't exaggerate any of the disasters. It's because for a lot of them there's no need to. If something's going to vaporize the Earth, we're done. So why make that sound any worse than it's going to be? Yeah. But what I do talk about is the science behind them, why black holes form. I mean, what is a black hole, and how does it form? Why is it that these things are dangerous, although in reality, the odds of these things happening or being a danger to us are really low. So while an asteroid impact will occur if we don't do anything about it in the next 100 or 1,000 years, a lot of these things, like a black hole passing through the solar system, they're fun to think about in sort of a scary movie kind of way, but the odds of them happening are so infinitesimal it's not worth worrying about. So I like to talk about that. I want to make you go, yee, when you're reading it, but I don't want you to go, "Blah!" and run around in panic in circles or anything.
Tell that to the dinosaurs, huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the lines I like. If you
I have a question rather similar to the one I asked Dr. Ginger Campbell earlier in regards to how much does pop culture contribute to this sort of fear. I mean, here we are at Dragon Con. We've got half a dozen science fiction tracks around the place. I'm trying to embrace my inner costume fondness here. I mean, we should have more costumes, quite frankly, and I think we should start with you and those feather boas.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Good. Photo opportunity, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, this is very dignified. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, it could be worse. You could be wearing rainbow
He's
suspenders.
leaving it on, isn't he? He's leaving it on.
Good.
I'm wearing a pink feather boa now.
You look fabulous.
President of the JRF, just saying. All right.
Yeah. Ain't I great? Now,
there are far worse pictures of me at this convention, I think.
Cool. And they'll be available for $29.95.
My dignity was left on the welcome mat, I think, when I got to Atlanta.
How much does pop culture contribute to this fear? I mean, there are so many films out there which, let's face it, really need people with qualifications standing in on the facts and adding to what is being put out there, especially young people. I have young women telling me, here we have the serious feather boa.
The black one's a little bit classier.
I have young women because the Square Kilometre Array, we're hoping to get it out near where I am in Western Australia. Young women, in fact, who, as I was doing research, saying, I'm interested in the scar coming out, and I'm intrigued by science fiction, and I've seen how it's being portrayed, and I want to get into the industry. So how much of a contribution does pop culture does?
We have a half an hour left, right, that I can go into this? Yeah.
Go for it.
30 seconds.
Pop culture does contribute a lot to this fear because people are very concerned about asteroid impacts or other things like that. But it's an unrealistic presentation. Deep Impact, the movie that came out in 1998, was relatively accurate. Armageddon, of course, was not. Somebody once commented that Armageddon had sub-comic book level science, and I thought, wow, yeah, that's wow, and that's about right. And it's funny because Armageddon, they talk about an enormous asteroid that's going to hit the Earth and wipe out all life, but they actually, when they talk about some of the other aspects of the movie, they underestimate the danger of it. They talked about the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs having the impact of 10,000 atomic atomic bombs or something like that. And it's like, it wasn't so much 10,000 as it was 10 billion or something like that. I mean, they just really, really grossly underestimated it. So it's funny how they try to exaggerate things and screw it up, and when things really aren't a danger, they make it seem like it is because, it's a movie or a TV show. I'm hoping that my book will help straighten some of that out. I've been giving it to TV producers all the time at Comic-Con.
So you do treat these theories as well? You treat the pseudoscientific theories? You touch upon them?
I talk about alien invasions in the book, and because I thought that would be fun to write about, and it turned out to be fun but also a little creepy, because it seems more likely you talk about viruses or bacteria falling from space, and it's really, really unlikely for this A to happen or B to be able to really do anything to us. But just reading, I actually realized I don't really understand why bacteria can make us sick. So I got to read about that. Yeah, that was icky. And what viruses do. And prions. Oh, God. Oh, prions. Terrify me. They scare the crap out of me. I'm never going to eat, beef, American beef again. But then I talk about aliens and why don't we see aliens? And nobody really knows.
We do. Come to Australia.
Well, I guess that's true.
So we must wrap this up, unfortunately, Phil. But on a final note, in your research and according to your book, are we any safer in Australia?
Good question.
No. No. Because these events are global in nature, so it doesn't matter where you live. And in fact, in Australia, everything can kill you. The grass there is venomous. The air, it's like, oh, look at this pretty cone, and you're dead. So I think the sharks actually have wings in Australia.
They do, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, on that note, I'd like to thank Dr. Phil Plait.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank Zone reporters Dr. Karen Stolzno and Kylie Sturgis.
Yay!
Which is good to thank you.
That was Dr. Phil, the bad astronomer Plait, talking to the Skeptic Zone at DragonCon this year. If you would like to win a copy of his brand new book, Death from the Skies, simply head to the Skeptic Zone blog. Our blog is at www.skepticzone.wordpress.com, and there you can enter in our slogan and logo competition. So win the Death from the Skies prize at skepticzone.wordpress.com.
The Australian Skeptics National Convention for 2008 was held in Adelaide, South Australia. 2 days of talks, dinners, good times, and lots of skepticism. Zone reporters Dr. Rachael Dunlop, Amanda Rose, and Kylie Sturgis were in attendance, and we managed to grab some interviews along the way.
And we're here right now at the Adelaide Convention, and I'm standing next to the Ubermaster skeptic, Barry Williams. Barry, how are you this wonderful morning?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
So what are some of the features that you're looking forward to at this conference?
Living long enough to see the end of it, that's the most important thing.
I know we've got Loretta Marron coming up.
Loretta's here, and I'm looking forward to her talk, and Richard, of course, and yourself. In fact, a bunch of old friends are going to be talking here, which I'm looking forward to a lot, and maybe seeing some new people that I haven't seen before. Good.
This, however, despite the fact that you're going to be leaving the Australian Skeptics in a formal capacity, will you continue to attend conferences so we can see you in the future as well?
I'm the only person that's attended all 20. This will be the 24th I've attended. 24. And, I've got to go to next year's because that'll make 25, which is a nice, and then I can die in peace.
Oh, well, certainly hoping for a really long life and certainly more conferences.
I'll go for the 50th.
Yes, outlive us all, in the name of skepticism. That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, people are sort of turning up here, and there's all sorts of a long queue going out the door here, Kylie, for this convention.
It's absolutely massive.
And there's some strange people in the queue here. Well, I should say strange, of course.
They're very sceptical and very wondering and want to know more about the weird.
Yes. And let's talk to a person at random in the queue. Hello. Hello, young lady. What's your name?
My name's Jessica.
Hello, Jessica. What brings you here today?
Oh, I'm a skeptic. Yeah,
I see.
I'm a skeptic, and I'm looking forward to what looks like a great program and a great day and a great dinner tonight and a good day tomorrow.
Now, did you bring your husband by any chance?
I did. He is right behind me.
I couldn't help but notice his legs.
Oh dear.
Just ready to give anyone a bit of a stomping who deserves it. Any creationists.
They are fantastic.
They look like bother boots, don't they?
They're the genuine Doc Martin 8 holders.
Oh yes, I've got it here. Aren't they fabulous?
These are made in England though, not in China. These are
lovely.
originals.
Got the proper yellow stripe.
Purchased in 1990.
And they still last. It's the wonderful thing about them.
About 15 years I didn't wear them.
They're for stomping on ear candles.
Maturing.
So do you see an analogy between the awesome power of the Doc Martin and skepticism?
I'll have to think about that.
Yeah. Because the fact that, it's sort of long-lasting,
Power
tough,
must be carefully directed.
carefully directed. Yes, good hit.
They must be maintained and polished up.
We'll have to see if we can get...
Now here are some interviews conducted by Kylie Sturgis, starting with Loretta Marron, also known as the Jelly Bean Lady.
How are you? Fantastic, particularly fantastic because you're presenting again. How are things progressed since the last conference?
Well, very slowly, but they are progressing. Yeah, they tell me it's like water on a rock.
Oh.
And it's going to take that long, but with the new Labor government coming in, there's been some very positive signs. Yeah. So I'm optimistic that something may happen eventually.
Okay, so what are some of the goals that we're hoping might come through with the new change in government here in Australia?
All right, well, the first thing that's happened is because of the Medical Journal article that we put out in January.
Yes, I'll put a link on that on the Skeptic Zone website so everyone can check it out. Yeah.
Right, well, that was showing the lack of regulation for complementary medicines. The federal government's organised a group of people including Professor Christelle Marr from Bond University, the Drugs Interaction Group from the Mater, and a whole bunch of other wonderful people who are interested in complementary medicine to come up with a recommendation on a resource that is accessible to healthcare practitioners and to consumers. Now, we're right in the middle of that. We've narrowed it down to 6. I don't know what they are because it's, double-blinded, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that will come out in the next couple of months.
You've always been a groundbreaker in terms of getting information out. Your website, for example, that was one of the first resources that I found in terms of making links to challenges to complementary medicine online. And now we've started to have sort of like even more of a trickle effect. For example, Simon Singh's book, which has come out in regards to trickle treatment.
Brilliant book. Absolutely brilliant book. In fact, I quite often quote the book. Even yesterday someone asked me about acupuncture and I said, you better read his book. The Germans have done 10 mega trials and the results are just coming out now and it's shown to be placebo. But another thing that might happen, back in November last year, new guidelines were given to the TGA on weight loss products.
Yes.
Now they're sitting there, they're all written and they've written to me to say, we've got all these new guidelines, and 11 months later they're still collecting dust. But I'm hoping in the next few months, maybe they'll come out. But that's really quite sad because 7 million overweight, obese Australians, 4 million diabetics, and the government is raking in millions in GST on these products. The guidelines were written by an orthodox doctor, and they're good, which is probably why they don't want to put them out. As opposed to the homeopathic guidelines that have the draft has been released, which were written in consultation with stakeholders. In other words, the homeopaths helped them write the guidelines. The guidelines, they said, back in 2003, an expert committee said to the TGA, you are responsible for safety, quality and efficacy. In this 85-page document, they've forgotten about the efficacy.
Bloody hell.
So it's 85 pages and not one mention of the fact that the stuff doesn't work.
They pretty much diluted it out, haven't they?
That's right, yes.
Oh my God.
So that's kind of quite sad, but you know, the skeptics are right onto that one as well.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for skeptics out there? I mean, you've just been like a one-woman force of nature in so many ways and really inspirational. What can people do to make that first step, do you think?
Complain
Yeah.
About the advertising. When I started on this, the Complaints Resolution Panel, who are quite good, not perfect, but reasonably good, were getting 10 complaints a month. Now it's rocketed ahead. And that's a terrific thing to do, because if you get rid of the advertising, it's a step in the right direction. The other thing you can complain to is your local pharmacy, because I can get rid of 100 adverts, but you walk into the pharmacy and he's selling all the rubbish there.
Yeah.
And that's quite sad.
Yeah, it's really depressing how we can go into a local pharmacy, find everything from ear candles to little packets of complete and utter nonsense. And yet, people are willing to listen to the consumers, I must admit. If you put it forward reasonably and don't tell them, oh my goodness, you're a criminal for selling this stuff that just essentially burns your ears out. Being calm and rational does seem to have a bit of an impact, I must admit. And it's one of the things that you've always put forward, I must admit, being the calm, rational, we care people.
Well, the other thing too is the doctors, like Professor John Dwyer, a fellow Australian Skeptic of the Year, said to me one day that he thought it was great that I was coming out on this issue because I was a consumer. Yeah. And he said, I'm powerless to do anything when people don't complain.
Yeah, you got to hear the voice of the people.
Got to hear the consumers, so get out there, complain, complain, complain.
So we're back here again at the Adelaide conference, and I seem to be having a sequence of stare interviews because I've now got Peter Ellerton, the winner of the Critical Thinker of the Year Award for 2008. It is wonderful to meet you finally offline, Peter.
Yes, you too, Carly. Quite a few phone conversations, online, emails, etc. But it's nice to put a face to it all.
And it is wonderful to know that Pactus is being recognised. It has just become an absolute powerhouse of resources and information for people teaching critical thinking.
That's great to hear. I know just looking at the web statistics that it's going to quite a lot of countries. I think we're up to 80 countries now, and the big ones are America and the UK and Canada and India, surprisingly.
India?
Quite a lot there, yeah.
Fantastic.
And what's particularly pleasing is seeing some of it go through Africa too. So really? that's a nice idea.
In many ways it echoes the philosophy behind Philosophy for Children, the P4C group, in terms of getting it out there, making it worldwide and allowing everybody to have the opportunity to investigate the community of inquiry. That's one of the sources behind a lot of your work, isn't it?
I don't claim to be an expert in the Philosophy for Children area. I leave that for my betters. But I can put out what I know is working in classrooms right now as resources, and those people working in the Philosophy for Children area have probably a better insight to the psychology behind it, etc., how it's supposed to work. But as I say, one of the main purposes of the website is resourcing and awareness raising. So that's really what we're trying to do. So put stuff into teachers' hands so that they can say, well, look, that sounds like a great idea, but what physically can I actually do to make it happen? And you on your own blog, you made that point about it. It's so easy to talk about this stuff. There are a lot of people saying this is a great idea, but how do you actually do it? Every school talks about wanting to produce critical thinkers and independent learners, and when you ask them, well, put your finger on the curriculum exactly where that happens, you find that it dissolves into the warm fuzzies. So you need to be able to say, well, this is what we do and this is how we do it specifically, and here are the resources, and here's some assessment pieces which we have. So go for it from there.
It's something that Michael McRae, another presenter at the conference this year, was tapping into, saying to skeptics, right, let's have goals, let's have achievable goals. If you really want this to be getting out there, let's start seeing how we can do that. One of the ways that you're doing it includes videos as well. I've noticed that you've got a sequence there.
It's an experimental technique at the moment.
We've been experimenting with podcasts for a while, so we know how it's tough getting it out there.
But YouTube is such fantastic technology. It seems ridiculous not to be able to get this out to as many people as possible. The simple points that I want to make in the lessons as well, really can be gotten over in 2 or 3 minutes sometimes. And their basic points is not rocket science. It really isn't. It's simple and clear. And yet you'll find that the understanding about these points is no better among teachers generally than it is among the general public. And so, I'm trying to direct this particularly towards teachers. To say, look, if you want to be discussing critical thinking in the classroom, if you want to be talking about what a hypothesis is, if you want to talk about the distinction between a scientific law and a scientific theory, whatever it might be, here's some sharp and concise points that you can use in the classroom to get it across. This is how to make the distinction. This is just the bloody simple point that you need to make, and nobody's making the point. So that's the way of getting that.
So Peter, for people who want to know more, where do they go?
They go to www.pactiss.org. It's Pactus. It stands for Philosophers and Critical Thinkers in Senior Schools.
Oh man, I'm going to be continuing to contribute, and I hope other people join in the force that you've given. I've seen your
contributions. Thank you. I've even seen Mike McRae's contributions just recently too. So it's great to have that stuff up there. And I'd even love to have some of this stuff up there, but we'll see how that goes.
We will start making a move. Yes, definitely. Thank you so much.
obviously, with that sound in the background music, we're clearly at the Australian National Conference over here in Adelaide, and I'm sitting here talking to Mike McRae, who's an old friend of mine. I previously interviewed him for the Tank podcast, and here I am talking to him for the good old Skeptic Zone. Mike, it's been a fascinating conference.
It's been interesting, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, this is probably the first time I've seen it quite heavily biased towards education, and your own presentation talked about your own views about science education and how scepticism can be involved.
Seems to be a bit of a focus of mine.
Yeah, it does. And I particularly like the way that you suggested several professional groups that skeptics could probably tap into. And in fact, it was a question of mine. How do skeptics get in touch with science communicators and science in a more proactive way?
I think skeptic groups need to have a better idea of what they're actually aiming towards before they go into any real contact with any groups or deciding who they want to talk to. The problem I tend to find is the actual goal seems to be very vague. It's like this grey area of, we want people to not believe in psychics. We don't want people to pay psychics. We don't want people to go to a homeopath. We
want kids to be critical thinkers.
Exactly. Even educators don't really know what the term critical thinking means. It's not a straightforward, simple definition. It's a whole group of skills. It's a collection of values and attitudes. Yeah. So to have this blanket idea, and I think that's the problem, is it's very simple to go, we want people to be skeptical, we want people to be critical, but really what does it look like? But I think once you've got an idea of what the goal is and how to approach it, you can then evaluate it as to see how effective you are. If you don't have any of those things, if you don't have goals or an idea of how to actually see if your goal has succeeded, then I'm not sure really what's happening in the end. I can't see whether skeptics or what skeptics are really doing.
Yeah. You made the point of critical literacy was perhaps a better term to be using. What does that involve?
Critical literacy is probably the latest in terms that is being bandied around. I know people love to have a common language to discuss when they're talking about things. So critical literacy is, at least my understanding of it, the ability to take in information that you receive through a text, so you're reading it, listening to it, watching it, and evaluate it for its usefulness. And by that, I mean, obviously, information you get, you want to look at to see... I don't like using the words true or false. I think there's a philosophy behind that says it's absolute. And obviously, skepticism is not looking at absolutes. It's a confidence in things. So I guess usefulness is how confident you are that a bit of information you get is going to do what you want it to do. So when you make a decision on things, you want the prediction to come true in the end. I decide I want to go to the shops and buy an ice cream. I'm making that decision that there's going to be ice cream there. Yeah. And I want that to be pretty true, because otherwise I'm wasting my time. So when you make a decision to do something, you have an idea in the end of what you're going to be doing, and you want the information for that to be fairly useful.
So it's not necessarily science class based, this notion of finding evidence and finding what could be possible, maybe not truth, but certainly a reasonable conclusion by the end of it. It could be taught in English, for example.
Yeah, it's also the problem I guess we have in approaching education from a discipline-based background. Yeah. Life isn't discipline-based.
No, that's true.
We don't go out each day and go, I'm now using maths. Or
Stand back, I'm going to do science.
Exactly.
Yeah, we just don't, no.
That's it. You do things. So I might be drawing. And yes, if you ask me, I could probably say, well, I guess that's an art thing. But I don't have that in mind. So we have skills that we apply to a whole range of things. I think the point I'm at now in understanding how things work has to do with more values than necessarily just a skill or just content. You almost say that there's three levels to it. Fundamentally, you need to have a value that appreciates a certain objective reality. If you can't have this epistemology that kind of says, I will, everyone has their own objective reality, and everyone's entitled to that. It doesn't work, in my view. That's a fairly important value. However, for me just to go out and say, well, you'll now adopt my values, that also doesn't quite work.
Well, we raised the issue at one point during one of the lectures that Richard Saunders was doing. One of the audience members raised the question of Aboriginality and how different cultural views might approach something.
It's really tricky to try to get across different cultural groups. We often think of cultures as being something that's radically different to the everyday that we associate with. But if you think about the everyday you associate with, there's many subcultures within that. You're going to come across a whole range of groups. And they haven't come to the conclusions that they've come to purely based on stupidity or lack of education. They've come to those conclusions based on values.
Yeah.
So they're raised with a particular appreciation of beliefs of the family, or they've come to a particular conclusion based on their friends, so the peers that they might like, and they're a huge influence on people. So to have the attitude, especially as an educator, that you can walk into any particular classroom and just
anywhere from Northern Territory to
anywhere in the world, for
local,
exactly.
Wagga Wagga to Central Sydney,
That's
and think,
right.
I've got the same class.
I will now teach science.
Yeah.
It's very tricky to do. I have actually worked out in some Indigenous communities, and the experience has been outstanding. And I mean, Aboriginal kids, I've found that perhaps a whole mix of reasons, are really great problem solvers.
Yeah.
You give them a situation and give them some materials, and their mind just seems to branch out and find these most radical ways of dealing with it. Yeah. And it's blown me away, like just in the experience I've had from all different cultural backgrounds. Indigenous kids just, hand them stuff and bang, they'll go away with it. Now, the values they tend to have also vary quite a bit. They will tend to have a hierarchical structure where you have elders that will believe certain things and, pass on that respect. So you respect your elders. Family groups are amazing. In a lot of Indigenous communities, the concept of a family extends far beyond what we appreciate. We have very much a nuclear understanding of family, which is mum, dad, couple of kids, and then you extend away from it. Yeah. That doesn't really work in the same way. I met one guy who introduced me to who we call his dad. And I went, hey, okay, nice, shook hands. And then he introduced me to another guy who we called his dad. And I was like, well, which one is your dad? I later found out neither one was his biological father. Yeah. But it was a respected term where this guy went, you are now my son. And so that was his dad. Yeah. And happened in a couple of different ways. So again, aunties, uncles, cousins, has nothing to do with that biological blood relationship necessarily. It's a completely different system. But the values itself involves a different way of communicating. That if I had walked in and said something about your cousin, and I'm thinking a biological direct relationship like that, they're not going to interpret it in that way. The value system and the way of communicating about various terms is slightly different. And so that comes back down to science. If I walk in and start talking about this objective reality and a system of rules, it just doesn't have that same connection within those families. So whilst in school they might have that, they go home and they'll adopt a different way of thinking about things, different way of communicating. And they'll learn to separate the things that they talk about in school with the things they talk about outside. Yeah. And so there's two different systems.
I found that myself in terms of students who had successfully managed to enter in prizes for... managed to successfully enter in their projects for a particular Skeptics competition. They'd say, okay, I have analysed tarot cards, and yet they would then quite casually tell me about their family's belief in feng shui and how they saw no harm in it and how they continue to support it.
Exactly. And people have different understandings of what they mean by those things as well. You were talking previously about a girl who was talking about the psychological help that a psychic might be able to offer.
Yeah.
I don't think she was necessarily talking about the actual psychic powers, but rather the means of communicating with people to help them think. And I think on that quite a bit. People say, I use tarot to help me psychologically. Yeah. Once again, people are talking about different things there. We have to be careful when we talk about superstitions. A lot of people say, touch wood. Does that necessarily mean they're really thinking?
I do it all the time. Even today, for example, when talking to someone and you were nearby, and I said, touch wood, I'll get this done.
That's right.
And I believe you and your mother, for example,
I say my mother says touch wood all the time. She doesn't really think that
it's
good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we have those things. And so once again, when it comes to skeptics communicating with different cultural groups, you really have to be careful about what it is you're really talking about with that. Simply saying bar humbug to all superstitions, and someone goes touch wood and you start lambasting them for for having that practice. It's a social practice. They mightn't be sitting there going, I don't really mean it, but they mightn't also be touching wood because they really feel that that's going to have some direct objective outcome. It's a social practice.
I find it a comfort thing myself.
A lot of people do.
I think probably my last question revolves around something that's been on my mind and quite a few people's minds for some time, the Daniel Loxton essay, Where Do We Go From Here? What would be your final point, I guess, for skeptics in terms of here's an idea of where you should go from here? What would be your contribution?
I think they've got to... The first thing they've got to do is have goals.
Goals.
Here is the goal.
Yeah.
This is what we want to see.
Yeah.
The goal cannot be we must eradicate these belief systems, but rather...
Or we must have all kids as critical thinkers.
Exactly, because that's too... something solid that says we can see this. If my goal is to have, in the future... X number of kids winning this competition or something. I don't know, something solid that you can actually put
ranging,
out there.
not being in my community, in my schools,
Something
for
like
example,
that,
or maybe someone doing a proper investigation into its
That's
efficacy.
right. Something where you can evaluate it and go, the goal I had has now been achieved. Now we go the next step.
Yeah.
If you don't have solid goals, then you can't see if you're actually succeeding in anything. You can't see the progress you're making. You don't know if you're making any difference in the community whatsoever.
Yeah.
So you first need goals. Then you need a way of actually looking to see if you've achieved those goals. Only then, once you've got those two things, can you say, who can help me actually achieve these? Who in my community is doing this already, or can I make connections with and discuss this with?
Yeah.
I think once you've made those three steps, then we will see some changes. Until then, I know Richard was talking before about preaching to the choir, which is not a bad thing. We do need choirs.
Yeah.
And they do need to be reinforced and spoken to in a way to feel as if they're achieving something.
Of all ages, both
Definitely.
genders, or not even particularly sure of their gender, as I raised in my own speech,
And we've now got a choir, which is fantastic. However, what are they going to be singing next, I think is the question. And where are they going to go from here is something we need to address.
Thanks to everybody who helped organise the 2008 Australian Skeptics National Convention. The next convention will be held in Brisbane, Queensland, in 2009.
Show your skepticism to the world by wearing a Skeptic Zone t-shirt. Just the thing for keeping UFOs and ghosts out of your face. Available in many colors and in women's and men's sizes. We even have some for kids and babies. Skeptic Zone t-shirts. Order yours today at www.skepticzone.tv.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello everyone and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. Today I want to talk to you about complementary and alternative medicines, also known as CAM or WOO, in pharmacies or drugstores across Australia. And of course there is way too much to cover in this short segment, so I've chosen my top 3 to present to you in some detail. You can see a full list of my other bugbears on the accompanying blog for Dr. Rachie Reports at skepticzone.tv. But for now, wander into your local Australian pharmacy any day of the week and stacked alongside the legitimate science-based medicines, you'll find all manner of snake oils and magic potions. From the relatively innocuous vitamin and mineral supplements, however evidence for their efficacy remains controversial, to the more bizarre like iridology, homeopathy and ear candles. And should you need professional advice about which woo is best for you? Well, in Australia, many pharmacies have a consultant naturopath and iridologist whom you can usually see free of charge. Let's begin with my personal favourite, ear candles. The practice of ear candling involves placing a long candle in your ear, lighting the far end, and supposedly a vacuum is created drawing wax from your ear canal. Some practitioners will also tell you they draw out bad energy. And as our good friend Loretta Marron says, be careful when walking past a session of this nonsense, you might be struck by unexpected negative energy. In my opinion, the only thing ear candles are good for is dripping wax in your ears and setting fire to your curtains. Unfortunately, in Australia, this product is listed with the TGA, which is the equivalent of the FDA, giving them undue legitimacy, which they don't deserve because they do naught. Iridology. Iridology is usually administered by a visiting naturopath or iridologist, and a pharmacy next to my place advertises this rubbish on a large sandwich board out the front. You can see the pictures on my accompanying blog. Now, iridology originated with the Hungarian physician Ignác von Pexley in the 1860s when he was treating a broken leg and noticed a dark streak in the patient's eye. He then spent years mapping marks in patients' irises, which he associated with various illnesses, and this resulted in a variation on the iridologist's map of the eye still used by practitioners today. Unfortunately, as it is the case with many alternative therapies, large variability exists between iridologists when it comes to diagnosis. But collectively, it seems these people are most afraid of wheat and will usually advise some kind of special diet. In a report published in the Australian Doctor in 2004, a GP, Professor Max Camion, posing undercover as a tired teacher, was prescribed all manner of special diets, but never told you need to get more sleep And interestingly, 80% of tiredness is caused by a simple lack of sleep. Homeopathy. Homeopathy was invented by Samuel Hahnemann back in the 18th century and is based on the concept of like treats like. That is, a concentrated solution of the toxin is succussed, which is basically just shaking it vigorously, to instill the memory of the original substance in the solution. And this is known as the mother tincture, which is then diluted extensively to beyond the point where there is any possibility that any molecules from the original solution remain. Now, Richard Dawkins describes this in his recent documentary, Enemies of Reason, as similar to placing a drop of the active ingredient in all of the oceans. So basically, you are buying very expensive water. Now, the most heinous thing about homeopathy is the marketing of homeopathic vaccines and medicine for children and babies. Whilst cures for colic are bad enough, in a most disgusting example of deceit in 2006 in Australia, a manufacturer of natural and homeopathic medicine was forced to withdraw a vaccine for meningococcal disease. Now, meningococcal disease is a rapid onset and often fatal bacterial infection which causes meningitis, which is inflammation of the lining of the brain and spinal cord, and or septicemia, which is blood poisoning. And the media coverage and subsequent withdrawal of this product was partly due to whistleblowing by the Australian Skeptics, who in 2005 produced a press release after being informed at the Parents, Babies and Children's Expo in Sydney that you could vaccinate your children with homeopathic preparations. So why should we be concerned about these so-called medicines? Well, in the case of homeopathy, as I've just told you, this stuff does nothing. Shouldn't we just leave it alone? Well, absolutely not. In fact, homeopathy can do harm since it does nothing at all. So whilst you may think your baby is vaccinated from the fatal meningococcal C strain, they are in fact at risk of dying. And putting this woo alongside pharmaceutical science-based medicine immediately lends it legitimacy. In Australia, pharmacists undergo very similar training to science graduates. So why do these well-qualified, critically thinking, science-literate and respected members of the community tolerate quackery in their dispensaries? Well, in Australia at least, part of the problem is that large manufacturers of natural medicines also own chains of pharmacies. For example, a company in Queensland, which manufactures several natural medicine lines, also owns the trading name for 2 pharmacies. So you can see it's in their interest to promote all their products. And what better way to do this than through the respected white-coated pharmacist? In my opinion, it's purely and simply a money-making exercise. And the biggest problem in Australia lies with the legislation, where Woo or CAM can get a government listing combined with an official-looking number, and this immediately provides credibility to the product. I recently had a conversation with the respected neurologist, president of the New England Skeptical Society and distinguished podcaster, Dr Stephen Novella. Regarding complementary and alternative medicine, he expressed his dismay to me that more scientists and doctors don't get angry about this stuff. Well, I'm here to tell you this little black duck does, and perhaps that's where we can start the tide turning. In some sense, we are lucky in Australia, in that we have a one-woman terror of the TGA, known as Loretta Marron, who continues to lobby the government and has in fact had considerable success in getting several products delisted. But sadly, it seems the woo in pharmacies is not limited to CAM. I was in a pharmacy on the northern beaches of Sydney some time ago and was shocked to see books by the notorious psychic Sylvia Browne for sale alongside the Twee porcelain gifts. I kid you not, there is nothing scientific about that. You can find the relevant links for this story on my accompanying blog at skepticzone.tv. And if you have a science-based medical issue you want Dr Rachie to investigate, feel free to email me at Rachael@skepticzone.tv or visit our website and go to the About Us page to contact me. Until next time, this has been Dr Rachie Reports.
AstronomyCast takes a facts-based journey through the cosmos as it offers listeners weekly discussions on astronomical topics ranging from planets to cosmology. Hosted by Fraser Kane of Universe Today and myself, Dr. Pamela Gay of Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, this show brings the questions of an avid astronomy lover directly to an astronomer. Together, Fraser and I explore what is known and being discovered about the universe around us. Join us each week as we take a facts-based journey through the cosmos at astronomycast.com.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
And welcome once again to the Think Tank. We've made our way here to the club up the street, and Amanda Rose, I must say, has had a very nice night tonight here at the club.
We've had a very auspicious start to the podcast.
We have. Before we started recording, Amanda won a couple of raffle prizes of glorious gift cards. Was it?
Glorious gift cards. Is that how you describe it? $100 of gift cards at Woolies.
Well done. I'm here with Amanda Rose, Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello, Richard.
And Michael Wolloghan.
Thanks for having me.
And we're once again here at the Think Tank, ready to think and drink. And just before just before we start the Think Tank, I'd just like to mention to everybody that our very first episode of The Zone featured an interview with Mark Roberts about the 9/11 and the truthers. And some people have commented, rightly so, that the audio quality wasn't up to scratch. Well, that was because we had to get the interview quickly, and for a number of reasons, that's the best audio we had. But subsequently, I have received the original tapes, and I've put up the video of that interview with Mark Roberts. If you go to skepticzone.tv, you can actually click on our video link, see the video, and the audio is much better. But I think we'll kick off today's Think Tank with you, Michael. What do you have for us?
The first story I wanted to discuss relates to the Church of Scientology.
Oh, them again.
An 18-year-old New Jersey man will plead guilty to the January online attacks that took down the Church of Scientology's website.
Oh.
He faces 10 years in prison on computer hacking charges.
Wow.
Now, the reason I wanted to mention this particular story is if you're a young skeptic or if you're a young cult critic, don't do anything illegal.
Yes.
You've got to rise above. Don't stoop to the level of the charlatans and the fraudsters. Play it by the rule book. It's the best way to do it.
I completely agree. You can have an awful lot of interesting times and fun and do some really good stuff in skepticism. You don't have to go out and do silly things and break the law. I totally agree.
It is easy to get carried away when you're
we all
deeply involved in something and you're just inside the cocoon, and you're getting reinforcements. It can happen to skeptics as well as to everyone else, that we get our positive reinforcement from our colleagues and our friends, and sometimes that can push you a little bit too far. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I've got a story that broke last week in Australia about a massive alien spaceship which was supposed to land on Earth on the 14th of October. And an Australian psychic predicted this. She insisted that it was going to occur on October the 14th. And bookmakers were incredibly worried about this because last time they took bets on something to do with space-based issues was back in 1969 with the moon landings, and they in fact had to pay out millions and millions of dollars. And so the story says here that they stopped taking bets on whether this event would happen. But do any of you know what happened?
Well, I must have been. I think I slept in that day.
Right.
I didn't get up early enough, or maybe I went to bed too early.
Was that? When was this Adelaide Skeptics conference?
It was. Well, the conference was the 11th to the 12th, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it would have been the Monday, I guess. No, the Tuesday. The Tuesday after the Skeptics conference. So maybe we scared them away. I don't know.
I went back to work after a long weekend away. That felt like the end of the world. I don't know.
Well, this lady, her name is Blossom Goodchild. Isn't that a lovely name for a psychic?
Blossom Goodchild? That's something like the goons would come up.
Well, she's based in Queensland, Richard. They do have some unusual names up there. Yes. She said it was going to land in the American desert. And she said the aliens were coming in love to help us and our planet move to a new, higher vibration of love.
That's nice of them.
Yeah, it is nice of them to travel all that way to just give us a hug, isn't it? But in fact, they didn't. They didn't arrive, so we're a little bit disappointed about that.
I'm heartbroken.
Well, we saw our own UFO this week, didn't we?
Actually, Rachel and I went plane spotting. Yes, folks?
Yes, we
went
did.
Plane spotting.
We
and
are nerds.
We were by the airport waiting for the A380.
Yes, we were.
Instead, suddenly, from a building nearby, a weather balloon emerged and went up into the sky, and we were going, that's incredible, it looks like a UFO. And I can't believe it that there was an actual weather balloon, the classic...
Well, I've never seen one. I don't think you've seen one released like that before, have you?
No.
And we did take some photographs of it when it had gone off into the distance, and it does look like it is a UFO. It's an unidentified flying object from that distance.
But it's got its... on a cable underneath, it's got two metallic objects which are reflectors or they're transmitters or whatever. But as soon as it gets some altitude and these things start glinting in the sun, it looks really eerie.
Yeah, it does. And because the metallic part of it captures the sunlight, it flickers when it's quite high up in the sky.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, wasn't it, to see it actually be released. I'd never seen that before. And then when you got home, you did a search for Sydney weather balloon.
And there it was.
And it looks exactly like that.
Yeah. So next time you hear some debunker saying, "Oh, it's probably a weather balloon," they might be right.
Yeah, they might be right.
Yeah.
Well, there is another UFO story that broke yesterday, or in fact today, and most of you would have heard about this. The UK Ministry of Defence has released all of their UFO information from the last 20 years.
Oh, yes, I saw that,
Yeah, so it's something like, I don't know how many files they've got, but...
an X number of files, eh?
X number of files, yeah. Oh, Richard. Oh, I missed that.
Sorry.
Yes, an X number of files covering 1986 to 1992. I'm just going to let that one pass.
Well, it's the best joke he'll make tonight.
What, the best one he'll make tonight?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're probably right, Amanda. So they released these files after a flood of requests from enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists who are convinced the truth is out there, Richard.
Well, it's out there.
Well, it probably is. It's on that weather balloon we saw.
We should trust no one.
There's also another story of a US fighter pilot who was scrambled to intercept a UFO in East Anglia, and after he fired at this mysterious blip, it disappeared from his radar. So clearly...
He fired at it?
Yes, he was told to scramble, and he fired at it, and then it disappeared.
Is that the same guy who said it disappeared at 10 times the speed of sound?
I didn't
I heard a report.
that. Probably.
I heard it on the news, this American voice on the end of the phone, like...
Yes,
and it disappeared at 10 times the speed of sound, thinking...
That's the gentleman...
Something you just say off the top of your head, isn't it?
His name is Milton Torres.
Uh-huh.
He's a US Air Force fighter pilot, and he was based in England at the time. He's now living in Florida. Yeah, so I've been reading some of the comments too, because I did a search for this on Google and I got 75 hits just in the news section, and there are a lot of people commenting, and most of the comments are, well, this is quite interesting and it's funny. Not a lot of people are saying that they're believers. And someone else has said that, in fact, you can download all these files for free from the Ministry of Defence for a month, and then after that time they're going to start charging for them. So someone else has said that they're just trying to make money out of it, which, why not? Fine. There is actually a really interesting collection of pictures that people have submitted to the Ministry of Defence as anecdotal evidence for what they've seen. The last interesting article I found about this was a quite funny and sarcastic article where the reporter says that another report includes the first-hand account of US Air Force pilot that I just mentioned. And this reporter says, and I quote, "As of press time, no confirmation was given as to whether or not that Air Force pilot was Will Smith or Harry Connick Jr. So people are having fun with it.
I have a story from Kuala Lumpur. A 19-year-old Malaysian and his two cousins have been charged with a murder for allegedly beating to death the young man's parents in a bizarre ritual meant to cure them of a smoking habit and other problems.
Well, it did that.
Now, my question is, have they heard of nicotine patches before? I'm sure they must have the equivalent of the quit line in Malaysia.
That's pretty dramatic. So they were performing this. Is it a ritual or what?
Well, that's right. In Malaysia, superstitious beliefs are massive. And in villages, it's common for people to seek help of spiritual healers for mental or physical illnesses. And sometimes you don't know if you want to laugh or cry.
Well, that's pretty sad, really.
And the prosecutor said that these three who have been charged, the maximum penalty for them is the death penalty. So
everybody loses.
Absolutely.
God, that's terrible. No, you're right. They must have a quit line or something similar. It's pretty extreme.
That is pretty extreme.
But it wasn't a religious ritual. They referred to it as a bizarre ritual because of the nature of the murder.
No, they're involved with some type of peculiar cult. The details of that I'm not particularly sure of. But apparently got out of hand, and they weren't supposed to kill the parents, but it just kind of eventuated.
Now, I'm going to change the pace a little bit now. When we were in Adelaide a few weekends ago for the Australian Skeptics National Convention, which you would have heard the interviews from earlier in this episode, Amanda, Rachael and I and Kylie Sturgis were all in a car travelling towards the convention. If they know what's coming. And I had a little recorder with me, and I'll just play you now what happened as we were driving down the street.
Put them on Facebook.
What is this vehicle we're about to... What?
Oh, it's carrying glass or ladders or something.
It looks like part of a carnival ride. It is.
It does. Woo!
And there's one ahead.
It's a camel.
Is it?
Let's chase the camel. Here we go, gang. Okay.
It is. It's a camel.
We found a camel.
I don't believe it.
Here we go, guys. Take out the camera. Take out the camera. Camel.
Ah, and what else is? There's a horse here. There are two camels and some kind of pony.
Welcome to the think tank, where we will bring you camels for your listening pleasure. Everyone's scrambling for cameras.
Something you often see on
It's a bit
freeway.
late now that we just passed a camel.
Well, he's coming up behind. We've got the lights up ahead, so maybe we'll park
I've got
next
my
to the
camera
camel.
out, so if he stops next to us, we can...
Yeah.
Camel.
Where's the camel?
It's pulling up to the left of us.
Camel. Here we go.
It's camel.
Oh, man. Welcome to Easily Amused Podcast.
The driver of the car's laughing at us.
Okay, there are two camels right next. Three.
No, that's a horse.
No,
Oh.
two camels and a horse.
There's a box of ducks as well.
There is not. There is. You're kidding.
Oh my god.
Quick, take the photograph.
Quick, take a photo. Take a photo. We've got to put
You
this
got
up
it.
on the side.
Now, folks, if you go to skepticzone.tv or to our Flickr page, you can actually see the camels we're looking at.
Oh, god.
That's too
Aren't they
funny.
lovely?
Oh. Are they Bactrian camels or dromedaries? There's ones with two humps and one was with... Oh, he's looking at you.
Oh.
He's in love with Rachel.
There he goes. On it.
Bye-bye, camel. Oh, he's following us. He's following
He
us.
just stuck his tongue out.
He just stuck his tongue
The
out.
Great Pyramid.
Sorry,
Cairo.
Sorry?
The last time I saw camels was I was at the pyramids outside Cairo.
Oh my god. I've never been to Egypt.
They wouldn't have been on the back of the truck though, would they? No. There were men with machine guns on the back of them.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's definitely the way to ride a camel, I think. Heavily armed and ready for action.
Well, we're nearly at the convention now, so on that note of the camels and ducks,
We're heavily armed and ready for action at the Australian National Convention here in Adelaide.
it's bye-bye from the special
Driving edition.
driving camel edition of the think tank. So there you go. The things
File under easily amused.
Oh, come on. There was a box of ducks.
That was
Okay,
the
the box of
funniest
ducks
thing.
was a nice touch.
That was the funniest thing. I mean, to see one camel, then to realise there were two, and then to see there's a Shetland pony.
Yes.
And then to find a box of ducks. That was just... It just doesn't happen every day.
It does in Adelaide, strangely enough.
It happens to us, it seems. Well, I've got a story which is quite upsetting. This is a story that is based in Western Australia here, and it's about a serial killer who has become known as the Claremont Killer.
Oh, yes.
He committed most of his crimes in a suburb of Western Australia called Claremont. Now, this story has been going around since 1996 because a girl by the name of Sarah Spears disappeared back in January 1996, and her father had reason to come out to the press quite a few times recently because he reported that up to 400 psychics and clairvoyants from across the world had contacted him since his daughter disappeared. And he says how he felt harassed. He described how he fell into chronic depression because of this harassment by clairvoyants who demanded money to help find his daughter. And he has been reluctant to speak to the media up until this point, but yesterday he said that his emotional and mental trauma had caused him to come out. And he said that they hounded me to death. I'd been getting it every day. It was just an onslaught. They were telling me all sorts of things. They'd give me cryptic clues. They had my emotions on a roller coaster. And I can't understand why anyone would do this to me in the situation I was in. It just made it worse.
Well, that's what we hear. I think these people are probably well-meaning or maybe not, but they're deluded.
Well, they certainly are deluded, but in this case I wouldn't say that they would be well-meaning if they're asking for money.
Oh, right.
I mean, they are saying to him they want money for assistance. So if they're well-meaning, why won't they do it just to help him without remuneration?
Out of the goodness of their heart. Yeah.
That's right. But a couple of days ago, there was an additional arm to this story when a group of these psychics got together at an event at a casino in Western Australia, and they're calling themselves the Psychic Task Force. And they claim that they have put together an identikit image of the man that is known as the Claremont serial killer, because obviously he hasn't been caught yet. And at the event, the psychic showed the audience an identikit image, which they believed to be him. They claimed he's now aged between 35 and 40. And police have declined to comment on the psychic's claims, but they say they consider them inaccurate and damaging to the investigation. And now, Mr. Spears, who's the daughter of Sarah, who disappeared in 1996, has said, psychics just want to make money from other people's grief and misfortune. It upsets me that they are still trying to gain from the death of my daughter and the other girls after all these years.
It's crazy, isn't it? And the newspaper gave this prominence. What about if a group of plumbers got together and came up with an identikit? It just makes as much sense as people who call themselves psychics, because psychics have as much psychic ability as so plumbers. Far we've seen.
I mean, the coverage of it was negative, the one I saw about the psychics.
In the media, it was, yes. I mean, they were referred to in this article by Mr. Spears as shysters. And interestingly, the last line of the article says the psychics involved in the event could not be contacted for comment yesterday.
And they did this in a casino, right? And they didn't all walk away with the money.
I don't know.
They didn't all go then to the blackjack tables and the roulette tables.
Well, I guess they could have, but perhaps they don't want to take advantage of people, Richard. They're just there to help.
Of course.
Yeah, they don't make money off there.
They don't want to make money off it.
How many times have we heard that? They're not doing it. That's why they can't do Randy's million or the 100 grand that the Australian
because they're not in it for the money.
They're not in it for the money.
No. They're just there to help people. Speaking of psychics, I'd like to introduce to everyone the Journal of Woman's Day.
Wow, look at that. What is Woman's Day, Rachel, for those people who live on Mars and may not have heard of it?
Okay, Woman's Day is... I'm not going to touch that one. You can link to Mars and America in the same breath. You can edit that out, Richard, please. Woman's Day is a highly credible, incredibly informative and all-round really good woman's magazine. It comes
very colourful too, I see.
It's very pink this week, isn't it?
Pink and yellow, yeah.
It comes out once a week and it covers such important issues as Marsha Brady, My Secret Drug Hell. It's official, Inside Madonna's Divorce. I'm bringing this notable journal to your attention, Richard, because recently this notable journal has got a brand new column. It's the John Edward Psychic column.
The John Edward?
John Edward is now writing for the Journal of Woman's Day. But yeah, his column appears on page 105, so it's right at the back of the journal.
Is that like numerology or something?
Look at that picture, he looks remarkably like a Muppet.
He does a little bit, doesn't he?
Yeah.
No, his column is about putting you in touch with your departed ones, which you know is his specialty. It's crossing over.
Good.
So basically what you do is you write to the magazine and you send in the name of the person you'd like to contact, and you just have to say what relation they are to you, whether they're a friend, a child, a husband, and he will connect with them, cross over with them, and tell you how they're going. But you'll be interested to know this, Richard. This column is butting up right next to the column from Deb Webber. Now you know Deb Webber, don't you?
Actually, no, I've never met Deb Webber, but I do know her cousin, so that's close enough.
Well, you know of her.
I know
She's
of her.
notorious, isn't she? She's infamous. And she's been appearing on a show called Sensing Murder.
Sensing Ratings, yes.
Yes, which is where they get a whole lot of psychic detectives together to go out and solve crime. And
They get a whole lot of people who think they're psychic or know they're not, and they don't solve crimes.
The funny thing is, I've watched a few of these shows, and it's always the same thing. They get them close to the site where the murder purportedly occurred, which is, on police record, and they all start shaking and getting all nervous and going, I can't be here anymore, it's too much for me. But every single episode I've seen, at the end it says this crime remains unsolved.
Yeah.
Every single one.
I know.
So what are they doing?
They're getting ratings.
Yeah. But let me just read you one thing. There are 4 pages in this Journal of Women's Day, most of which are ads for psychics.
Oh, yes.
So ring this number, pay $5.50 a minute. There's another one here called Anne. Anne allegedly does help solve crimes. She says she does, and now she's going to help uncover your secrets. So
I'd rather she stick to solving crimes.
Well, I would too, but she just wants to help people, Richard, like the ones we talked about earlier.
Of course, yeah.
So I was scrolling through this, and it's just the normal stuff of, will my dog come home tomorrow, or will I get a job in the place I want to get a job in? And then I found this one entitled Outrageous Claim. The question is, my mother-in-law has accused me of sexually interfering with my stepson. How do I handle this false accusation? Signed, Accused. Do you want to hear the answer?
No.
Go on then.
The answer is, she is eventually going to get caught out, so please ignore her. This is not the first time she has done this.
This is pretty serious allegations being thrown around here.
Yes. Well, it is the Journal of Women's Day. So this person has been accused of interfering with his stepson, and she's saying, well, the mother's lying. She does it all the time.
Or her stepson.
Well, yeah, it could be. But I don't think this is very appropriate to be dealt with and or printed in this magazine.
In what is more or less a glorified agony aunt column.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
But you do feel sorry for the people that turn to these psychics, and you do feel some sympathy for them. And these hucksters are taking their money, spitting out just garbled nonsense.
And it's interesting that a magazine like this, which is for women, you think that somewhere in the back of the people's minds they're thinking, they know this is rubbish.
Well, look, I like to think people, flick through it and read it, and they read that with the same seriousness that they read, Madonna's best friend tells all, sources claim.
Madonna's a friend close to Madonna's.
In some cases.
Which doesn't make it any better, but...
So from the bowels here of our favourite club down the street, and we might go upstairs and see if there's anything left to win in the raffle, or is it all over?
Well, Amanda's won all of it, I think.
She
got dirty looks from the nanas.
If you want the think tank team to discuss any items of interest, you can write to us. If you go to the About Us page on skepticzone.tv, write to us.
And don't forget to check the blog, where we will put all the links to things we mentioned during this think tank.
And we'll see you, we won't see you, in fact, you'll hear us in 2 weeks. So it's bye for now.
See you, everyone.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Richard, another spectacular zone has come to a close.
Oh, what a pity. I was just getting so zoned into the zone, and now it's zoning out.
Zoning out.
We're zoning out.
Phil Plait, what a legend he is.
That was a lot of fun. Phil was great, and if you look at the photographs on the website, you'll see that Phil and I were actually wearing feather boas during that talk.
Oh, goodness me. Where were you? Vegas, was it?
No, that was Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, right, okay, fair enough. And he didn't mention UFOs, though, did he? About getting if Earth could just get blown up by aliens or something.
What do you think, Stefan? Do you think it's going to
I
happen?
don't know. Well, I saw Mars Attacks the other day. That is a great documentary.
It is.
It's really good.
That's the government suppressed that from the news.
They
but
did.
These brave documentary makers went out.
It's just phenomenal. But it's funny because last week, a couple of weeks ago, it was supposed to be the official day that aliens were going to land on the planet. All these conspiracists were saying that, and I was actually really hoping that they would. I thought, wouldn't it be great if they did? And the date came and went, and nothing happened. It was very disappointing.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, I'm still holding out hope.
But don't fear not. Even if the aliens invade, we will have another Skeptic Zone in 2 weeks' time, and this is our creation special.
Wow!
Yeah, we're going to be interviewing Dr. Eugenie Scott.
Yeah.
In America there. I visited her Center for Science Education.
Excellent.
In California.
Is she sort of involved in the whole creationist sort of intelligent design debate?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's in there batting for the good side.
Batting away, batting for the intelligent designers. Sorry, battling for the scientists. Sorry,
Jeannie. And we also have an interview with Dr. Paul Willis, who you might know from the ABC.
I've met. He came and did a tank a long time ago.
He did.
We had a great old chat.
He did.
Bit of a paleontologist, bit of a happening dude.
He'll be talking about his adventures with these funny people called creationists.
Oh, it's going to be another fun show. But today was a lot of fun. By the way, thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening. And hey, why don't you just rewind? Have another listen just for fun.
Just do it. Just do it. And I'll see you in 2 weeks, Stefan.
Yeah, it's been great. We'll see you again. Thanks, Richard.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone, a miracle of technology. A universe